In the quiet town of Benton County, a brave German shepherd named Rex becomes more than just a police dog. He becomes a lifeline for two innocent sisters trapped in a nightmare. When darkness strikes and danger looms, Rex's loyalty and courage shine through, changing lives forever. But what happens when the enemy is closer than anyone imagined? Discover the untold story of heroism, hope, and the unbreakable bond between a dog and those he vows to protect. Watch until the end, because some secrets can't stay hidden forever. The sun was beginning its slow descent beyond the sprawling fields of Benton County, casting long shadows over the quiet rural highway that cut through the endless stretches of farmland. The golden hues of late afternoon mingled with the cool breeze that rustled the sparse leaves on towering maples lining the roadside. It was a place where life moved deliberately at the unhurried pace of the countryside, far removed from the chaos of the city. Lucas Grant sat behind the wheel of his black and white patrol cruiser, the hum of the engine low and steady. Beside him, Rex, his trusted German shepherd partner, sat alert ears, perked eyes scanning the landscape with trained precision. The dog's thick black and tan coat shimmered faintly in the sun's dying light, muscles coiled like springs beneath. At 38, Lucas carried with him the weariness of a man who had seen too much a burden etched into the lines around his hazel eyes. His dark brown hair, flecked with streaks of gray at the temples, was cropped short as per regulation, though he rarely bothered with a mirror anymore. His square jaw bore the shadow of a day's stubble, rough and unpolished. Years in the force, years in war zones far from home, had given him a solemn patience, a watchful stillness born from hard lessons learned too young. "Quiet tonight?" Lucas murmured to Rex, voice low but steady, as the dog flicked an ear back toward him, acknowledging the calm. They had been patrolling this stretch of Highway 18 for nearly an hour, a ribbon of asphalt meandering through farms and pine stands. The traffic was almost non-existent, save for the occasional truck rumbling in the distance. A perfect evening for a peaceful drive, or so it seemed. Suddenly, Rex's body tensed. His ears shot forward. His nostrils flared as he lifted his head, catching a scent carried on the wind. Lucas immediately felt the change, the subtle shift in the air. He slowed the car, eyes narrowing to scan the horizon. "What is it, boy?" Lucas whispered more to himself than the dog. Rex's amber eyes were sharp-focused on something up ahead. In the middle of the road, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, two small figures stood side by side. At first, Lucas thought they might be animals, deer or stray dogs. But as the headlights washed over them, the reality struck him cold. Two little girls, no more than 6 or 7, stood barefoot on the asphalt. Their matching honey-blonde ponytails whipped in the breeze. Their dresses, one pale yellow, the other soft blue, were stained with mud and darker streaks that Lucas's mind immediately registered as blood. The girls held tightly to each other's hands, eyes wide with fear, their small bodies trembling. Lucas didn't hesitate. He hit the brakes gently, bringing the cruiser to a controlled stop a few feet from them. The sudden halt startled the girls, but they didn't run. Instead, one of them, the one in the yellow dress, stepped forward timidly. "Please, help Mommy," she whispered, voice cracking under the weight of fear. Lucas's gaze followed hers to the roadside, where a woman lay sprawled across the brittle grass near a shallow ditch. Her dark brown hair fanned out around her pale face, and her clothes were torn and stained. Blood pooled beneath her head, seeping slowly into the earth. Her breathing was shallow and uneven, each breath a laborious effort. Without thinking twice, Lucas threw open the car door, the cold air biting at his skin. Rex was already out, moving protectively to stand between the girls and the open road, his posture calm but vigilant. "Kay, come here," Lucas called softly, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "I'm a police officer. I'm here to help." Emma, The girl in yellow nodded, clutching Mia's hand tighter. They stepped back, eyes never leaving their mother's motionless form. Lucas dropped to his knees beside Claire Brooks, checking for a pulse. It was faint, but steady. His hands moved quickly and methodically, pulling a field dressing from his medical kit and pressing it gently but firmly against the wound on her temple. Claire, Lucas murmured, holding her head steady. "Can you hear me?" No response. Behind him, Rex let out a low, warning growl, his ears twitching as he scanned the roadside. Lucas glanced up just in time to catch a flash of movement over the hill. A dark greenish-gray pickup truck speeding away, tires throwing gravel in its wake. The vehicle disappeared quickly, leaving only dust and the fading rumble of its engine. Lucas's gut tightened. He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We have a female adult down, severe head trauma. Highway 18 near mile marker 14. Request EMS immediately. Possible hit and run. Suspect vehicle is a dark green-gray pickup last seen heading eastbound." The voice crackled in his earpiece, confirming the ambulance was en route. Turning back, Lucas spoke gently to the girls. "I'm going to need you to stay here with Rex. He'll keep you safe." "What are your names?" Emma swallowed hard. "Emma?" "Mia," her sister whispered. Lucas committed their faces to memory, kneeling between them to offer what comfort he could. "Did you see who was driving the truck?" he asked carefully. Emma's small fingers twisted nervously in the hem of her dress. "He had a beard," she said, voice trembling, "and a bird, like a tattoo on his neck. It looked like wings." Mia nodded, adding in a whisper, "He saw Mommy on the ground, but he just drove away." Lucas's fists clenched at the memory of his own fallen comrades, ghosts of war that haunted him still. This scene was all too familiar. He forced the anger down, replaced it with focus. "You did the right thing telling me," he assured them. "We're going to find him." As sirens wailed faintly in the distance, the warm glow of the setting sun faded into a cooler, muted dusk. Shadows stretched long across the roadside as the emergency crews arrived. Lucas stayed with Claire, continuing his first aid as paramedics took over. Rex sat quietly beside Emma and Mia, his eyes never leaving the surroundings. Later, as the ambulance sped away, Lucas stood and watched the girls wrapped in thin blankets, their legs dangling off the back of the rescue vehicle. Despite the cold, a small spark of hope flickered in the amber eyes of Rex and in the heart of the man who had sworn to protect them. That night, beneath the quiet stars of Benton County, Lucas Grant made a silent vow he would not let this family fall through the cracks. Not this time. The sterile hum of the hospital waiting room was a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just hours earlier on the quiet rural highway. The walls were pale and unadorned, the fluorescent lights casting a cold, unwavering glare. Yet amid the sterile atmosphere, something fragile and raw hovered in the air. The trembling fear and tentative hope of two young girls, Emma and Mia. Wrapped in soft gray blankets, they sat side by side on a cushioned bench, their small hands clutching the fabric as if it might shield them from the world's harsh realities. Emma's pale yellow dress was replaced by hospital-issued clothes, and Mia's soft blue curls had been smoothed and tied back. Their honey-blonde ponytails, once wild and dusty from the roadside, now looked almost pristine, though their eyes held shadows no child should bear. Lucas Grant sat across from them, his uniform jacket folded neatly on his lap. His presence was calm, deliberate, chosen to be a pillar of safety in the girls' uncertain world. Beside him, Rex rested quietly, his amber eyes observing the girls with a gentleness born of unspoken understanding. Lucas had spent hours helping stabilize Claire, their mother, whose condition remained critical but steady. Now it was time to listen to the only witnesses who had seen the nightmare unfold. He leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but steady. "Emma, Mia, I know this is scary, but you're very brave. We want to help make sure the person who hurt your mom can't hurt anyone else." Emma swallowed and nodded, her fingers tightening on the blanket's edge. Mia looked up at Lucas with wide eyes, her lips pressed tightly together. "Can you tell me what happened?" Lucas asked gently. Emma took a deep breath, then began. "We were driving home with Mommy," she said, her voice small but clear. "She was driving the blue car. It was late in the afternoon and the sun was going down. We were singing songs. Mia nodded, adding Mommy's phone rang. She looked scared when she answered. She told us to put our seatbelts on." Lucas's eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you remember what else she said?" Emma shook her head. "No, but the voice on the phone was mean. It said they knew what Mommy saw." Mia squeezed Emma's hand tightly. "Then Mommy drove faster. But the green truck came out of nowhere and hit us." A shudder passed through Mia's small frame as she recalled the moment. Mommy screamed. The truck didn't stop. It just drove away. Lucas absorbed every word, knowing how difficult it must have been for the girls to relive those moments. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook. "Can you tell me about the truck? What did it look like?" Emma's brow furrowed as she thought. It was dark green, like the leaves on the pine trees. Big tires, big enough to go off the road. It was a pickup truck. Mia nodded in agreement. The truck was dirty, and the man driving, he had a beard and there was a bird tattoo on his neck. Big wings, like he was a hawk or something. Lucas paused, then gently said, "Did you see his face?" Emma nodded slowly. "Not very close, but yes." "He looked angry," Mia added in a whisper. "He didn't care about Mommy or us. He just wanted to get away." The details were precious, fragile threads of truth that Lucas carefully wove into the fabric of his investigation. Every word from the girls helped to illuminate the dark outline of the man behind the cruelty. "Thank you, Emma and Mia," Lucas said. "You're helping a lot. I promise we'll do everything we can to find him." Rex moved closer, resting his warm head lightly on Emma's knee. A faint smile flickered on the girl's lips as she reached down to stroke the dog's fur. The moment was brief, but profound, a small island of comfort amid the storm. Later that evening, back at the police station, Lucas sat at his desk reviewing the information he had collected. He tapped the notebook thoughtfully, then began making calls. "Detective Sarah Nolan," he said into the phone voice, firm but measured. "I've got 2 witnesses, girls aged 6, who gave a detailed description of the suspect male beard tattoo of a bird with outstretched wings on his neck. The vehicle is a dark green pickup with large all-terrain tires. The driver fled the scene." There was a pause. "Sarah, we're dealing with someone dangerous. This isn't a random accident." Lucas listened intently, his mind racing through the possibilities, the connections. "All right," he replied. "I'll coordinate with dispatch to alert all units on the lookout for a green pickup matching that description. Let's get everything we have on known offenders with similar tattoos. This man's not just running, he's hiding something." After the call, Lucas leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. His thoughts drifted back to Emma and Mia, their bravery in the face of terror, their innocent voices carrying the weight of a brutal act. He glanced down at Rex, whose eyes met his with unwavering loyalty. "We'll bring them justice, boy," Lucas whispered. The next morning, the hospital corridors buzzed with activity as Claire Brooks remained under close observation. Lucas had spent the night nearby, pacing and planning. He understood that time was critical. Every hour that passed increased the chance the suspect might slip away. Meanwhile, Emma and Mia were placed in the care of a gentle social worker, Carrie, whose soft voice and warm smile began to thaw the ice around the girls' frightened hearts. Lucas visited them again, bringing small gifts and stories to distract them from the nightmare. With Rex faithfully at his side, the man and dog formed a quiet shield around the fragile family. The investigation was far from over, but the first pieces had fallen into place. The green pickup, the tattoo, the driver's cold indifference, all clues that pointed toward a shadowy figure whose reckoning was fast approaching. Lucas Grant was determined. The road ahead would be difficult, but with every step he was closer to uncovering the truth and protecting the innocent. The early morning light filtered softly through the half-closed blinds of Lucas Grant's modest apartment. The city was still waking up outside, but inside memories stirred like ghosts that refused to rest. Lucas sat at the edge of his bed, fingers clenched tightly around a worn photograph, a faded image of a younger man in uniform standing side by side with comrades long lost to time and war. The edges of the photo were frayed, the smiles captured within frozen in a moment that felt both distant and achingly close. His hazel eyes, usually sharp and steady, clouded over with a flicker of pain. The years in the military had marked him in ways no visible wound could explain. They had taught him endurance, yes, but also carried with them the heavy toll of loss and regret. A sudden soft nudge against his hand brought him back to the present. Rex, his German Shepherd partner, pressed his large, warm nose into Lucas's palm. The dog's amber eyes reflected unwavering loyalty, a silent promise that he was there always. Lucas looked down and gave Rex a weary smile. "Morning, boy," he whispered. Rex's thick coat brushed against his legs as the dog settled at his feet, his breathing steady, the rhythmic sound a balm to Lucas's troubled mind. The bond between man and dog was forged in the crucible of shared hardship. Rex had been by Lucas's side through countless missions, from tense raids in foreign lands to desperate searches in the wilderness back home. Together, they had faced danger, uncertainty, and the thin line that separated life from death. Lucas remembered the first time they had met. Rex, then a spirited and untrained puppy, had been brought to the base kennel with a spirit that refused to be broken. From the moment their eyes met, Lucas knew this dog was different. Training was grueling for both of them. Long hours of obedience drills, scent tracking, and simulated attacks tested their patience and resolve. But over time, a deep trust blossomed. Rex was more than a partner. He was a friend, a guardian, a piece of Lucas's own soul-made flesh. Yet with every victory came memories that clawed at Lucas's peace. He recalled the dusty roads of Afghanistan, the harsh sun beating down on the convoy as it rolled through barren valleys. The sudden blast that tore through the air, a roadside bomb merciless and indiscriminate, shattered the illusion of safety. Among the chaos, Lucas lost Mark Delaney, his closest friend and brother-in-arms. The image of Mark caught in a burst of fire and smoke haunted him still. The screams, the silence that followed, they were etched in his mind. Rex had sensed it too. The dog's keen instincts had saved Lucas more than once, guiding him through moments when every second counted. But no amount of training or courage could erase the ghosts. Sometimes in the quiet hours, Lucas could still hear the echoes, the laughter lost, the promises broken, the lives cut short. He shook his head, trying to dispel the shadows. "There's work to be done," he told Rex softly. "People to protect." The present demanded his focus. The case involving Claire Brooks and her daughters was more than a job. It was personal. Lucas rose from the bed, the weight of his memories tucked away for now. He looked down at Rex, whose tail wagged faintly in greeting eyes bright with readiness. Together, they prepared for the day ahead. At the precinct, the atmosphere buzzed with urgency. The investigation into the hit and run had taken a darker turn, revealing threads of something more sinister, a criminal enterprise lurking beneath the surface of the quiet county. Lucas reviewed the latest reports, piecing together timelines and leads. Sarah Nolan, the detective collaborating on the case, had provided valuable insights. Her own struggles mirrored Lucas's in some ways, a dedication to justice forged in the fire of personal sacrifice. Rex sat patiently by Lucas's side as he studied the evidence, the dog's presence a grounding force. During breaks, Lucas would step outside, letting the cool air wash over him, Rex faithfully at his heel. The dog's steady companionship reminded him that he was not alone in this fight. Each morning, Lucas found solace in their routine walks through the park, the rustle of leaves beneath their feet, the crisp scent of pine and earth. Rex would dart ahead, nose to the ground, tail wagging, with the enthusiasm of youth despite his 7 years. It was in these moments, away from flashing lights and shattered lives, that Lucas could almost forget the burdens he carried. Yet the past was never far behind. One afternoon, while reviewing witness statements, Lucas's phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. New lead, it read. Suspect spotted near old Miller's garage. The name sparked a flicker of recognition. The dilapidated building on the outskirts of town had been mentioned before, a place where secrets were buried beneath rust and dust. Lucas knew it was time to move. He grabbed his jacket, clipped Rex's leash, and headed out. The drive was short, but heavy with anticipation. As they approached the garage, Lucas felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. The building loomed ahead, weathered wood-cracked windows, a faded sign barely legible. Rex's ears twitched, nose lifted as he picked up scents Lucas couldn't detect. Together they stepped inside the shadowed space. The air was thick with the smell of oil rust and forgotten stories. Lucas's boots echoed on the concrete floor as Rex led him to a corner where the dog's paw scraped against something metallic. A shard of broken side mirror lay there, its jagged edges catching the fading light. Lucas knelt, examining it closely. A strand of hair was caught in the fractured dark brown, familiar. His heart tightened. This evidence was more than a clue. It was a lifeline. Rex sat beside him, eyes alert, muscles coiled for action. The past and present collided in that moment. Lucas realized that the ghosts he carried were not just burdens, but fuel, a driving force to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As they stepped back into the fading daylight, Lucas felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Rex by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, man and dog haunted, but unbroken. The chill in the morning air cut through Lucas Grant's jacket as he stepped out of his cruiser, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. Rex was already alert, tail stiffened, nose twitching as he swept the roadside with practiced precision. The stretch of highway where Claire Brooks had been struck was quiet now. The bustle of emergency crews long gone, but the earth bore the scars of violence. Tire tracks pressed deep into the loose gravel patches of oil, staining the roadside dirt like dark fingerprints. Lucas crouched down, scanning the scene with trained eyes. He pulled on a pair of latex gloves and photographed the tire impressions, noting their distinct squared tread pattern. "These aren't your everyday tires," he muttered, tracing the pattern with his finger. "All-terrain, heavy-duty, designed for rough roads and off-road trips." Rex gave a soft huff, nose lowering toward a faint smear of oil near the edge of the tracks. Lucas glanced at the spot, nodding. The scent was sharp diesel mixed with grease, the telltale aroma of a truck that hadn't been maintained with care. "Good boy," Lucas praised quietly. "You smell that too?" The German Shepherd circled the area, body low, tail rigid. Suddenly he sneezed, then lifted his head, eyes locking on a faint trail leading away from the highway toward a narrow dirt path disappearing into the edge of the forest. Lucas signaled to the officers guarding the scene. "We're following this trail. Keep the perimeter secure." Without hesitation, Lucas and Rex moved down the path, the tall pines swaying above, casting long shadows on the forest floor, carpeted with needles and leaves. The air smelled of damp earth and pine resin, and the silence was broken only by the crunch of their footsteps and the occasional bird call. Rex's nose dipped to the ground, weaving through underbrush with sharp focus. After a short distance, the trail opened onto a clearing where a weathered building stood, an old garage, its wooden walls bleached and cracked by years of sun and rain. A rusted sign hung crookedly above the faded doorway, Miller's Auto Repair. Lucas paused, glancing around cautiously. The place looked abandoned, yet the fresh tire tracks leading into the yard suggested recent activity. Rex sniffed the air, stepping toward the garage's side where the dog's paw scrapped against the dirt. Lucas followed, crouching to inspect the ground. There, half buried in mud, lay a fragment of a side mirror. The metal frame scratched the glass, smeared with a dark, sticky substance. His stomach tightened. He carefully picked it up with a gloved hand and examined the shard. Tangled in the jagged edge was a strand of dark brown hair bound at the end, with a tiny plastic bead unmistakably Claire's. "This is it," Lucas said quietly. "Evidence we can't ignore." Rex stood beside him, ears perked, ready for whatever came next. The garage's creaking door swayed slightly in the breeze as Lucas stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rust tools hanging haphazardly on the walls, coated in years of grease. Dust motes floated in the shafts of light, breaking through cracked windows. In a dim corner, an elderly man sat hunched over a carburetor, his hands stained with oil. Lucas approached slowly. "I'm Officer Grant," he said. "We're investigating an incident involving a green pickup truck. Have you seen anyone come or go recently?" The man, eyes watery but sharp, regarded Lucas with cautious curiosity. "Name's Howard Miller," he rasped. "I mind my own business. Folks pay in cash, I don't ask questions." Lucas nodded, showing the man the mirror shard. "This was found outside. Looks like it came from a truck parked here recently." Howard's gaze flickered to the shard, then back to Lucas. "That truck was here last night. Dark green pickup, big tires. Left in a hurry, didn't stay long." Lucas's heart raced. The pieces were coming together. Outside, Rex paced near the yard, sniffing the earth and air, tracing a scent that led beyond the garage toward a nearby warehouse district. Lucas followed, anticipation mounting. The warehouse was an imposing structure of corrugated metal, its paint peeling and rust spreading like a slow poison. A chain-link fence sagged in places, the gate slightly ajar. Beyond it lay rows of shipping containers, stacked high, their faded numbers barely visible in the fading light. Lucas and Rex slipped inside, moving carefully through the maze. The air was thick with diesel fumes and the faint metallic tang of machinery. Rex stopped abruptly, nose lowered to the ground. Lucas knelt, inspecting the area where the dog pawed. Black grains scattered on the weathered wood floor caught his eye. Gunpowder residue unmistakable and dangerous. Beside it, a darker oil stain glistened with the sharp scent of unburnt diesel. The evidence was mounting, painting a picture of illegal activity and violence. Near the wall, covered by a tarp, Rex's paw scraped against a pile of objects. Lucas pulled back the cover, revealing a stack of license plates, 6 in total, each bearing different state numbers, cleverly altered to avoid detection. The plates were a makeshift disguise, a tool in a dangerous game. Lucas snapped photos documenting every detail. His phone buzzed. Detective Sarah Nolan's voice came through, tense and urgent. "We've got a lead. A man named Vincent Hale owns several trucks matching that description, known for smuggling and violence. This isn't just a hit and run, it's part of something much bigger." Lucas's jaw tightened. Vincent Hale was a name whispered with fear and loathing across the county. A criminal kingpin with a ruthless reputation. Rex growled softly, sensing the rising danger. Lucas pocketed his phone. "We're close," he said. "We need to move carefully." As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows lengthened across the warehouse district. Lucas and Rex prepared for the long night ahead. The trail was dark and tangled, but they would follow it wherever it led. For Claire, for Emma and Mia, and for justice. The late afternoon light filtered lazily through the slats of the blinds in the precinct's conference room, casting long, shifting shadows across the battered oak table where Lucas Grant sat alone. The room was sparsely decorated, functional, but wore a few faded posters pinned haphazardly on the bulletin board. A single flickering fluorescent light overhead, struggling against the encroaching dusk. The hum of distant voices and ringing phones was muffled here, replaced by a heavy silence broken only by the steady tap of Lucas's fingers against the table's scratched surface. Spread before him were stacks of reports, photographs, and digital printouts, each a fragment of the tangled web he was trying to unravel. His eyes moved methodically, absorbing the details with the precision of a man who knew the stakes were higher than ever. The weight of the case pressed down on him like a physical burden, settling deep into his bones. Yet even amid the pressure, his mind remained sharp, relentlessly hunting for the loose threads that could lead to the truth. Beside him, on the worn carpet, Rex lay quietly, his powerful body relaxed, but his amber eyes alert, silently absorbing the room's every nuance. The dog was more than a partner. He was Lucas's steady anchor in the storm, a silent guardian who had weathered every trial alongside him. The steady rise and fall of Rex's breathing, the faint twitch of his ears at distant sounds, these subtle signals were a reassuring presence amid the uncertainty. The conference room door opened with a soft creak, barely audible over the quiet. A figure stepped in, Detective Sarah Nolan, her silhouette framed momentarily against the bright hallway light before she closed the door gently behind her. She moved with a quiet authority, a controlled confidence born from years in the field. Her sharp, storm-gray eyes flicked across the room, taking in the scattered papers and Lucas seated at the head of the table. The long braid of dark hair that swung lightly behind her betrayed none of the burden she carried, but the measured click of her boots on the linoleum floor carried an unmistakable sense of purpose. "Lucas," she said, her voice calm but threaded with urgency. She paused just long enough to shed her coat and place a sleek laptop on the table before opening it with practiced ease. "I've been digging into the financial records tied to Vincent Hale's operation," she continued, her tone grave. "It's far worse than we imagined." Lucas looked up, his tired eyes meeting hers with a flicker of relief. "Glad you're here, Sarah," he said. "We've got leads pointing squarely at Jake Morgan, too, Hale's right-hand man. The tattoo, the green pickup, the violent past, everything fits." Sarah pulled up the chair next to him and sat down, the soft whir of her laptop joining the low buzz of the precinct. She gestured to the screen, revealing spreadsheets and transactional flows. Morgan isn't just some street-level thug. He's a seasoned enforcer, ruthless and efficient. If he's involved, things are going to escalate fast. Vincent Hale's empire stretches further than most people want to admit. Smuggling, money laundering, intimidation, you name it. Lucas listened intently as Sarah detailed the intricate connections, shipping manifests, mysteriously altered shell companies, funneling money through offshore accounts, suspicious disappearances linked to Hale's network. Each fact layered the investigation with deeper complexity, unveiling a criminal machine that was cold, calculated, and relentless. But it was more than the data that caught Lucas's attention. As Sarah spoke, he noticed the subtle shadows under her eyes. Faint lines etched by sleepless nights and unrelenting pressure. The tight set of her jaw betrayed the weight of her personal struggles. This wasn't just a case for her. It was a battle deeply entwined with her own life. After a brief pause, Sarah's voice softened, losing some of its professional edge. "My father's in the cardiac unit at Mercy Hospital," she confessed quietly. "Advanced heart failure. He was a cop too, a local hero back in his day. It's hard to balance this investigation with trying to keep him stable. Some days it feels like I'm being pulled in two directions." Lucas's expression softened with genuine empathy. "I'm sorry, Sarah. That kind of pressure wears on anyone juggling family and this kind of work." She nodded, her gaze flickering to the papers on the table before meeting his eyes again. "Yeah, but I can't walk away." Not while people like Vincent Hale are still out there, still hurting innocent families. This case is personal, not just professional. Lucas leaned forward, the determination in his voice unwavering. We'll get him. Together. For a moment their eyes locked, a flicker of gratitude and shared resolve passing between them. In that glance was a silent promise they would see this through, no matter the cost. Their partnership was forged in the crucible of shared purpose and personal sacrifice. In that quiet, worn precinct room, two warriors prepared to face the darkness, shoulder to shoulder, united by their commitment to justice. Over the next several hours, Lucas and Sarah immersed themselves deeply in the mountain of information before them. The precinct's dimly lit room was cluttered with papers, laptops, and coffee cups, silent witnesses to their relentless pursuit of the truth. They pored over witness statements, parsing every word for inconsistencies or clues that might have been overlooked. Forensic reports lay open beside them, each page filled with painstaking analysis of evidence collected from the scene and beyond. Surveillance footage flickered on the screen, grainy but invaluable images of vehicles' fleeting shadows, faces blurred by distance and poor lighting. Every piece of data was like a thread woven into a vast tapestry, slowly revealing the outlines of a dark and dangerous network. Each new fact linked to another, creating a complex web that connected Vincent Hale's shadowy operations with the hit-and-run that had upended Claire Brooks' family. Throughout this process, Rex remained steadfast at Lucas's side, lying quietly, but alert. The dog's amber eyes reflected the glow of the monitors, ever watchful and calm, a steadying presence amid the mounting tension. Sarah leaned back in her chair and pulled up a detailed dossier on Jake Morgan Hale's enforcer and the man who had become their prime suspect. She highlighted sections past arrests, patterns of evasion, and known hideouts scattered across the county. "Morgan's a ghost when the heat comes down," she said quietly, her voice edged with caution. "He's got a knack for disappearing just when you think you've cornered him. We need to think several steps ahead, anticipate where he might strike next, or where he's hiding." Lucas tapped his fingers against the desk, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "And we can't lose sight of Emma and Mia," he said. "Those girls need protection. If Morgan's dangerous, they're prime targets." Sarah gave a faint smile, though her eyes remained serious. "They're tougher than most kids their age, but tough isn't enough in a case like this. We've coordinated with social services. They'll be placed in a secure foster home, monitored around the clock." The reality of the situation settled heavily over the room as dusk crept outside, painting the city in deep purples and blues. The sun's last light faded, and shadows stretched longer, mirroring the creeping darkness enveloping the case. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Lucas found himself opening up to Sarah in a way he rarely allowed others. He spoke of the ghosts that haunted him, the memories of war, of friends lost too soon, of battles fought on foreign soil and within his own mind. He told her about the solace he found in Rex's unwavering loyalty, the dog's quiet companionship, a balm against the isolation that often threatened to consume him. Sarah listened intently, sharing her own burdens. The weight of her family legacy, her father's heroic service now shadowed by his fragile health, hung heavily in her words. She described the constant internal battle between her duty as a detective and the personal fears that gnawed at her. Their conversation was interrupted by the shrill ring of Lucas's phone. He answered quickly, a voice on the other end, delivering news that set adrenaline rushing through his veins. An informant had spotted a vehicle matching the description of the green pickup near an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Lucas exchanged a sharp glance with Sarah, the determination in their eyes crystallizing. "This might be our chance," Lucas said, voice low but resolute. Sarah nodded firmly. "We have to move quickly. If they slip away now, we might not get another shot." They gathered their gear with practiced efficiency, flashlights, radios, tactical vests, and clipped Rex's leash firmly in place. The German Shepherd responded immediately, his body tense with anticipation, muscles coiled and ready. The drive to the warehouse district was silent, but charged the city's edges, giving way to rows of rusted shipping containers and long-abandoned industrial buildings. The scent of oil and decay hung heavy in the air. As they approached the looming structure, Lucas felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, that sharp electric surge that meant danger was close. Rex's nose twitched, nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of diesel sweat and something darker beneath it all. His ears flicked forward, tail stiffening. Inside the warehouse was a cavernous space filled with towering stacks of crates, their surfaces coated in dust and grime. Shafts of dim light filtered through the cracked roof, illuminating motes of airborne dust that danced like ghosts in the stale air. The faint smell of oil and old machinery mingled with the metallic tang of rust. Lucas and Sarah moved cautiously, eyes scanning every shadowed corner, every potential hiding place. The weight of the moment pressed heavily. They knew this place held secrets crucial to dismantling Hale's empire. Suddenly, Rex let out a low, guttural growl, the sound vibrating with warning. His ears flicked sharply toward a shadowed doorway at the far end of the warehouse. Lucas froze, eyes narrowing. He raised a hand in a silent signal to Sarah. Together they advanced with slow, measured steps toward the source of the sound. Beyond the door came muffled voices, the clinking of metal sounds unmistakable and threatening. A clandestine meeting was unfolding behind that barrier. Secrets traded and deals brokered in whispered tones. Their presence had been almost imperceptible, but the moment had arrived. Lucas felt the adrenaline surge anew as he prepared to confront the darkness head-on. In that charged silence, he knew that with Sarah Nolan at his side and Rex leading the way, they possessed the strength and resolve to tear through the shadows that Vincent Hale had built, and to protect those innocent lives caught cruelly in the crossfire. The night had fallen deep and thick over the outskirts of town by the time Lucas Grant, Detective Sarah Nolan, and Rex reached the abandoned warehouse. The building stood like a shadow among shadows, its cracked windows and rusted metal siding barely visible beneath the pale wash of moonlight. Over the years, it had been swallowed by neglect, its doors hanging crooked weeds clawing through broken concrete, and the distant hum of city life fading into silence. As they stepped cautiously onto the cracked asphalt lot, Lucas could feel the air tighten around them. The scent of oil and damp earth mingled, tugging at memories of past investigations where danger lurked just beyond the visible. Rex's tail lifted slightly as he began to circle nose to the ground, muscles tense, alert to every scent and sound. Lucas crouched beside the dog, scanning the perimeter with his flashlight's beam shadows dancing wildly on the corrugated metal walls. "Stay sharp," Lucas whispered to Sarah. "We don't know who or what we might find in there." Sarah nodded, eyes sharp beneath the brim of her cap. "Morgan and his crew won't give up easily. If this is one of Hale's hubs, we need to be ready for anything." Together they approached the main entrance, a wide sliding door, rusted nearly through, partially ajar, as if inviting them inside. Lucas gave a subtle signal, and Rex stepped forward, the dog's padded paws silent against the concrete. Inside the warehouse was a cavernous space swallowed by darkness. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing stacks of crates and barrels lined up with an eerie precision. Dust motes hung in the air like forgotten memories, disturbed by their careful footsteps. Lucas's heart quickened. Somewhere amid these shadows lay answers to the violence inflicted on Claire Brooks and to the sprawling criminal network that Vincent Hale had built. Rex stopped suddenly, ears flicking forward, nose twitching. He padded to a corner, sniffing along a dusty crate before pawing at the ground. Lucas knelt to examine the spot and saw a faint smear of dark oil mixed with something sticky. Carefully, Lucas reached into his pocket for his gloves and retrieved a small evidence bag. He collected a sample of the residue, careful not to contaminate it. Sarah moved closer, her breath visible in the cold air. "That matches the oil from the pickup," she murmured. "The one that hit Claire." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "Then this place is definitely connected." As they ventured deeper, the sound of dripping water echoed faintly, and the stale air grew heavier. They passed broken pallets, discarded tools, and crates marked with faded labels from distant ports. Lucas's flashlight caught a glimpse of something unusual, faint footprints in the dust, freshly disturbed. Rex growled softly, tracing the path with his nose. The trail led them to a stack of crates near the rear exit. Lucas carefully lifted a tarp draped over the pile, revealing a collection of counterfeit license plates, 6 or more each, bearing different numbers and states. "These are used to swap out vehicle plates to throw off any tracking," Lucas said grimly. "Smart and sloppy at the same time." Sarah jotted down notes, her eyes scanning the area for more clues. Suddenly, Rex's paw scraped against something metallic beneath the crates. Lucas knelt again and pulled out a shattered side mirror, the same make and color he'd seen at the garage. Attached was a single strand of dark brown hair bound with a tiny plastic bead, the unmistakable evidence linking the attack on Claire directly to this warehouse. "This is the smoking gun," Lucas said quietly. As they processed the scene, Lucas's radio crackled to life. Dispatch reported movement on the east side of the district, an unmarked vehicle suspected to be linked with Morgan. Sarah exchanged a look with Lucas. "We're running out of time." They secured the evidence and exited swiftly, with Rex leading the way. Outside, the night was silent except for distant sirens. The cool air filled their lungs as they regrouped by the cruiser. Lucas felt the weight of the investigation settle deeper. Each clue uncovered exposed more danger. Hale's operation was vast, ruthless, and closing in on them. But so were they. With Sarah at his side and Rex at his heels, Lucas knew the fight was far from over, and they would face whatever darkness awaited together. The sterile scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the pediatric ward, blending with the steady rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft, measured footsteps of nurses as they moved from room to room. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered faintly, casting a clinical, almost cold glow that reflected off the pale blue walls and polished linoleum floor. Rows of cribs and beds were neatly lined against the walls, each one a small island of vulnerability in a world filled with strange machines, unfamiliar faces, and the endless buzz of hospital life. Within this quiet yet unsettling environment, 2 small figures lay side by side on a cushioned hospital bed, cocooned in soft, warm blankets that shielded them from the chill of the sterile room. Emma and Mia, sisters bound not only by blood, but now by shared trauma, held hands tightly as if their intertwined fingers could tether them to some semblance of safety. Their honey blonde hair, which had once been wild and streaked with dirt from that dreadful day, was now carefully washed and neatly braided by the gentle hands of the nurses who cared for them. Yet despite the outward appearance of calm, shadows of fear, confusion, and uncertainty lingered beneath their youthful faces, ghosts of the violent night that had so abruptly shattered their innocence and altered their lives. The quiet murmur of voices from the hallway was interrupted by a soft knock at the door, announcing the arrival of Lucas Grant. With him came Rex, the German shepherd, whose calm, steady presence had become a beacon of hope for the girls. The dog padded silently into the room, his sleek black and tan coat shimmering softly in the artificial light. His amber eyes, usually so sharp and alert, were now softened with warmth and reassurance, immediately lending an air of comfort to the tense atmosphere. Emma's eyes flickered open at the sight of Rex. For the first time since the accident, a small, tentative smile flickered on her lips, a brief spark of joy amid the heavy weight of their ordeal. "Hey, girls," Lucas greeted gently, his voice low and soothing as he carefully pulled up a chair and settled himself beside the bed, mindful not to startle the sisters. "How are you feeling today?" Mia clung tightly to Emma's arm, seeking the comfort of her sister's presence. But she managed a shy nod in response. Lucas reached slowly into his pocket and withdrew a small packet of colorful stickers. Stars, smiling animals, and playful shapes, his way of offering a token of encouragement and kindness. "For being so brave," he said with a warm smile, handing the packet to Emma. The light in Emma's eyes brightened as she eagerly accepted the stickers, peeling off a star and carefully placing it on her blanket. Mia watched with wide, curious eyes, the faintest hint of a grin tugging at the corner of her mouth. Just then the door creaked open wider, and a woman stepped inside, the social worker assigned to the girls, Carrie Novak. With soft blonde hair tucked neatly behind her ears and a kind, reassuring smile, Carrie carried a quiet strength in her demeanor. Her name badge glinted under the fluorescent light. "Hi, Emma." "Mia," Carrie said softly, kneeling beside the bed to meet their eyes at the same level. "I'm here to make sure you're safe and to help you through all of this. You're not alone, okay?" The girls nodded, their fingers still entwined, and Carrie reached out gently to take Mia's small hand in hers. Her presence was like a balm, steady, compassionate, and understanding to the fragile spirits of the two sisters. Over the coming days, Lucas and Rex became a familiar and comforting presence in the ward. Each visit, Lucas brought small gifts carefully chosen to brighten the sterile environment. Picture books filled with colorful illustrations, soft toys to clutch, and sometimes just his voice, recounting stories of far-off places and daring adventures that whisked the girls away from the monotony and anxiety of hospital life. Rex, for his part, offered something beyond gifts or stories. The dog's quiet companionship, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of his body curled near the bed, the softness of his fur beneath their hesitant fingers was perhaps the greatest comfort of all. His unspoken loyalty and calm vigilance created a protective shield around Emma and Mia, reminding them silently that they were not forgotten, not alone in their struggle. Even on the hardest days, when fear threatened to overwhelm, Rex's presence offered a steady heartbeat of hope. Lucas watched as the girls began to respond. Small smiles grew more frequent, laughter occasionally bubbled up, and the heavy shadows that had clung so tightly began to lift, replaced by fragile rays of light and healing. One sunlit afternoon, as Lucas Grant sat perched beside Emma and Mia's hospital bed, his voice gentle and steady, he began reading a story aloud. The soft cadence of his words wove through the sterile room, filling the space with warmth that seemed to push back the coldness of the hospital walls. The girls listened with wide eyes, their attention momentarily transported away from their fears and the sterile beeping of machines to a world of faraway adventures and hopeful endings. Just then, the hospital door creaked open with a soft, welcoming sound, and in bounced Maddie Parker, an effervescent 9-year-old, with chestnut hair tied into 2 playful pigtails that bobbed with every step. She wore a bright red hoodie that hung loosely on her slender frame sleeves, rolled up to her elbows, her face alight with excitement. Maddie's eyes sparkled as she carried a plate carefully balanced in her hands, the aroma of freshly baked cookies wafting through the room. The scent was rich with the comforting notes of chocolate and peanut butter, instantly sparking an eager reaction. "Hi, Emma. Hi, Mia," Maddie chirped, her voice bubbling with the unrestrained energy and innocence that only a child could muster. She stepped closer, offering the plate with a flourish. "I made these just for you. The best cookies in the whole neighborhood, I promise. Mom helped me, but I did most of the work." Emma's eyes widened, her gaze locking onto the plate as if it held a treasure. "Cookies," she whispered, a note of disbelief and delight mingling in her voice. Maddie grinned, her dimples deepening as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yep, fresh from the oven. Warm and gooey, just the way I like them." Mia hesitated for a moment, still shy before reaching out a tentative hand. She picked up a cookie with delicate fingers and bit into it carefully. The warmth and sweetness seemed to melt away, some of the tension in her face, and for the first time in what felt like days, a small, genuine smile blossomed on her lips. Lucas watched the exchange quietly from his chair, feeling a flicker of hope kindle within his heart. Maddie's visit was more than just a simple gesture. It was a splash of color against the dull gray backdrop of hospital days filled with uncertainty and quiet dread. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could break through in the form of friendship, kindness, and the simple joys that children so easily found. Settling cross-legged on the floor, Maddie launched into animated stories about her life beyond the hospital walls. She described school adventures, the excitement of soccer games where she played forward, and the neighborhood park where she and her friends had a secret clubhouse beneath an old oak tree. Her laughter was bright and infectious, ringing through the room, and slowly drawing the girls out of their protective shells. "You know," Maddie said in a conspiratorial whisper, leaning closer to Emma and Mia, "you guys are like superheroes, surviving everything and still smiling. That's pretty amazing." Emma looked up at her with shining eyes, her earlier shyness melting into courage. "I want to be brave like that," she said softly, her voice filled with newfound determination. Maddie nudged her playfully on the shoulder. "You already are. You don't even realize it yet." Outside the hospital windows, the world continued its steady march. Seasons changed from the crisp chill of autumn toward the promise of winter days, stretched and shortened, and life carried on with its usual rhythms. But inside this quiet room, a fragile sanctuary was forming, built not just on medical care, but on small, meaningful moments of trust and kindness. Lucas kept his visits frequent, often accompanied by Rex, whose calm and steady presence seemed to soothe even the most restless nights. The bond between man, dog, and girls grew deeper with every shared smile, every gentle touch, and every story told, under the watchful eyes of hospital staff. It was a silent promise, one that said these girls would not be forgotten, that their pain was seen, and their healing mattered. Yet despite the progress in Emma and Mia's recovery, Lucas knew the investigation outside the hospital walls was far from over. The shadows of Vincent Hale's criminal operation stretched long and menacing over the county, threatening not only the family he had sworn to protect, but countless others caught in the crossfire. The danger was real, persistent, and closing in. Still, here in this small room filled with whispered stories and soft laughter, a flicker of hope burned brightly. It was a light in the darkness, a fragile but powerful testament to resilience, courage, and the quiet strength of healing hearts. The early morning haze clung stubbornly to the streets of Benton County, shrouding the small town in a muted veil of gray. The world outside the precinct seemed sluggish, weighed down by the lingering chill, and the soft rustle of autumn leaves drifting in the breeze. But inside the conference room, the atmosphere was charged with a very different energy. Lucas Grant sank back into the worn leather chair, exhaustion heavy behind his dark eyes, but his mind racing with the implications of the latest developments. The case, which had seemed at times like a tangled knot, had finally taken a decisive turn. The evidence gathered from the abandoned warehouse, the shadowed relic of Vincent Hale's shadowy dealings, had been meticulously examined by the forensic team throughout the night. Now the results were clear and undeniable. Lucas unfolded the lab report slowly, as if savoring every line. The shattered fragment of the side mirror they had found buried in the dust and shadows of the warehouse carried with it a faint trace of dark brown hair. The technicians had been cautious in their wording, as is standard in forensic analysis, but their conclusion was unequivocal. The hair matched Claire Brooks' DNA profile with near absolute certainty. Lucas's fingers tightened around the report. The weight of that single piece of paper pressed on him more than any physical burden ever could. This was the missing piece, the irrefutable link that connected the brutal attack on Claire to the very heart of Vincent Hale's illicit empire. It was no longer a theory or suspicion. It was a tangible scientific fact. Across the room, Sarah Nolan was already seated at the table, her sharp eyes bright with cautious optimism. She looked up as Lucas entered, and for the first time in what felt like weeks, a flicker of hope kindled between them. The kind of hope that whispered promises of justice and closure, fragile but fiercely alive. "This changes everything," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of certainty. "We finally have concrete proof that Hale's crew was involved in the attack. This isn't just conjecture anymore. It's fact." Lucas nodded slowly, feeling the tension around his jaw loosen just a fraction. The breakthrough was a balm to the countless hours of doubt and dead ends. But he knew better than to let relief cloud his judgment. The path ahead was still fraught with danger and uncertainty. Yet the breakthrough was more than just forensic confirmation. Overnight, an informant, someone who had long risked everything by embedding themselves deep within Hale's inner circle, had stepped forward with critical information. Their voice was shaky, revealing the toll of fear and years of living on the edge, but their resolve was clear. They disclosed the exact location of a key facility where Vincent Hale and his notorious Lieutenant Jake Morgan orchestrated their operations, a sprawling compound concealed deep within the county's industrial zone. Sarah gestured toward the screen where a grainy satellite image projected across the wall revealed the sprawling compound in all its foreboding vastness. "This place," she explained, her finger tracing the outline, "is where Hale moves his shipments, stores stolen goods, and plans every move with chilling precision. It's heavily guarded, surrounded by fences and cameras, with patrols that don't miss a thing. It's the heart of their operation." Lucas leaned closer, his gaze sharp as he scrutinized the details of the layout. Warehouses with rusted roofs stood in regimented rows. Loading docks bore the marks of heavy traffic, while a labyrinth of service roads snaked through the property like arteries feeding a dark beating core. It was clear the entire facility was designed not only for efficiency, but also for secrecy, a fortress built to evade the eyes of law enforcement. The satellite image revealed hidden corners, shadowed spaces that could harbor weapons caches or holding cells. Areas where vehicles came and went under the cover of darkness, slipping unseen along narrow paths. This was no simple warehouse. It was a well-oiled machine of crime, a nerve center pulsing with illicit activity. Lucas's fingers drummed on the table as he considered the challenge before them. The compound was a fortress, but it was not impregnable. The informant's tip had handed them a rare and invaluable advantage, a foothold in enemy territory. Sarah's eyes met his, a silent agreement passing between them. "If we can intercept tonight, we stand a chance to cut off a major shipment, whatever it is they're moving. It could cripple Hale's operation." Lucas allowed himself a brief moment of grim satisfaction. For weeks, the investigation had been a grinding slog through shadows and silence. Now, with this critical intelligence, the tide might finally be turning. But he was also acutely aware of the stakes. Vincent Hale was no ordinary criminal. He was a man who ruled through fear and violence. Jake Morgan was the enforcer who made sure that fear was always present, always tangible. To confront them meant stepping into a lion's den. He glanced down at Rex, who sat obediently by his side, eyes gleaming with quiet determination. The dog was more than a partner. He was a lifeline. Lucas stood and paced the room, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. They needed to coordinate carefully with SWAT and federal agents, devise a plan that would minimize risk while maximizing impact. The element of surprise would be crucial. Sarah pulled out her phone, fingers flying over the screen as she confirmed details and relayed the informant's information to their contacts. "We've got to move fast," she said, looking up. "Morgan's crew won't wait around if they get wind of us." Lucas nodded. "And we can't forget about the girls. Emma and Mia are still in the hospital, and they need to be protected. If Hale finds out what we're doing, they might try to retaliate." Sarah's expression hardened. "We've arranged for their protection. Social services is on alert. They won't touch the girls. The two detectives shared a brief but meaningful look, a mix of resolve, weariness, and hope. They were fighting not just for justice, but for the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. Outside, the day began to brighten. The early morning haze slowly lifted, revealing the familiar streets of Benton County bathed in pale sunlight. Yet the calm of the town was deceptive. Beneath the surface, a dangerous game was unfolding, and Lucas and Sarah were on the cusp of striking a decisive blow. As they gathered their notes and prepared for the next phase, Lucas felt the familiar surge of purpose. The report in his hand was more than a piece of paper. It was a promise that no crime, no matter how carefully hidden, could escape the reach of justice. Together with Rex at their side, they would bring the shadows into the light. The informant also provided intel on a planned move. Sarah continued, her eyes narrowing as she conveyed the gravity of the situation. Morgan is preparing to transport a large shipment tonight. We don't know exactly what it is yet. It could be weapons cache, something even more dangerous. Whatever it is, if we intercept them now, we have a real chance to catch them red-handed. Lucas felt a sudden surge of adrenaline course through his veins. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for, a chance to strike directly at the heart of Vincent Hale's sprawling criminal operation. Months of painstaking investigation had led to this moment. The possibility of finally dismantling a key part of the network, stopping the flow of illegal goods, and bringing the perpetrators to justice filled him with fierce determination. "We need to mobilize a team immediately," Lucas said, his voice firm, as he began running through the logistics in his mind. "We'll need SWAT for tactical support, federal agencies for backup, and the local unit for perimeter control. There's no room for error tonight. It has to be precise, coordinated, and swift." Sarah nodded solemnly in agreement, but the weight of the responsibility showed clearly on her face. The gravity of what lay ahead pressed heavily on them both. After a brief pause, she asked softly, "And the girls, Emma and Mia?" Lucas's gaze faltered for a moment, his mind flickering to the two small sisters who had become the innocent center of this storm. But he quickly steeled himself, focusing on the plan. They're under protection. Social services has them safe in a secure facility. Our priority has to be to dismantle Hale's network before anyone else gets hurt, including them. With the decision made, the hours that followed passed in a blur of frenetic activity. The precinct hummed with urgency, phones ringing non-stop and radios crackling with instructions. Plans were drawn up meticulously on whiteboards, detailing ingress routes, contingency protocols, and escape plans. Roles were assigned carefully: who would lead the breach team, who would handle communications, who would cover the flanks. Every scenario was considered and every detail scrutinized. Lucas and Sarah coordinated the efforts between local officers, SWAT command, and federal agents, weaving together a complex web of cooperation designed to bring down a dangerous criminal enterprise with minimal collateral damage. Rex, ever the silent sentinel, remained close at Lucas's side throughout the preparations. The dog's sharp instincts seemed almost attuned to the mounting tension in the air. His eyes flickered with awareness, his body coiled in readiness. Lucas felt reassured by Rex's calm vigilance. The dog's presence was a grounding force in a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. As dusk finally settled, the sky transformed into a velvety black canvas dotted with distant stars. The city lights twinkled far off, but here on the outskirts of the industrial zone, darkness reigned, broken only by the occasional flicker of security lights guarding the compound. The assembled team gathered silently near the staging area, a patch of gravel just beyond the reach of the compound's watchful eyes. Officers adjusted their gear, checked weapons, and reviewed their roles in low voices. Every face reflected a mixture of resolve, focus, and the weight of knowing what was at stake. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the steady thump of his own heartbeat in his chest. The compound loomed ahead, a fortress cloaked in shadows, its gates locked tight and its secrets guarded fiercely by men who had nothing to lose. Beside him, Sarah gave a nod of encouragement, and Rex padded quietly at their feet, tail low but steady. With one last check of his equipment, Lucas stepped forward, the crunch of gravel beneath his boots, muffled by the night. Each step carried the gravity of justice and the hope for closure for Claire, Emma, Mia, and all the innocent lives tangled in Hale's web. The plan was clear: swift entry, secure the perimeter, intercept the shipment, and capture Morgan and any accomplices. Backup teams would be positioned to block escape routes while surveillance units monitored communications. Lucas's training kicked in. Every sense heightened. The faintest sound, the smallest movement could mean the difference between success and disaster. The air was thick with anticipation as the team moved into position. Lights from tactical gear pierced the darkness in sharp beams, shadows twisting in the warehouses and shipping containers. Time seemed to stretch taut. Then, as the clock edged toward midnight, the operation began. The night was about to reveal its truths, and the scales of justice would finally begin to tip. The night air was thick with tension as Lucas Grant, Detective Sarah Nolan, and the assembled tactical team gathered in the dimly lit staging area just beyond the perimeter of Vincent Hale's compound. The glow of the moon cast long shadows over the rough gravel ground, and the distant hum of city life felt worlds away. Here, surrounded by heavy equipment and tightly focused officers, time seemed to slow, every second charged with anticipation. Lucas stood near the center, surrounded by the team leaders and communication officers. Maps and blueprints of the compound were spread across folding tables, illuminated by the harsh light of portable lamps. Every detail had been painstakingly analyzed: the layout of the warehouses, the placement of security cameras, guard patrol routes, and potential escape points. Sarah crouched beside Lucas, her eyes scanning the latest updates on her tablet. Her jaw was set with determination, but beneath the professional exterior, Lucas saw the same blend of anxiety and resolve that burned in his own heart. "This is it," Lucas said quietly, voice low but steady. "Everyone knows their role. We move fast and smart. No room for mistakes." The team commander, Captain Reynolds, nodded sharply. "SWAT will breach the main gate simultaneously with the rear entry team, cutting off any escape. Federal agents will cover the perimeter. Communication stays open at all times. We expect resistance. Be prepared for anything." Lucas's gaze flicked to Rex, who sat quietly at his side. The German shepherd's ears were pricked forward, muscles coiled like springs beneath his thick coat. Rex's nose twitched as he absorbed the electric atmosphere, the unspoken signals of impending action. His keen instincts were razor-sharp, honed through years of training and countless operations alongside Lucas. Rex shifted slightly, tail flicking once, and Lucas reached down to scratch behind the dog's ears, offering a brief but meaningful moment of reassurance. "You ready, boy?" Lucas murmured. Rex responded with a low, confident growl, eyes gleaming with focus. Nearby technicians checked their equipment: radios, night vision goggles, flashbang grenades, all tools that would be crucial in the moments to come. The air was filled with hushed conversations, last-minute briefings, and the rustle of tactical gear being adjusted. Sarah rose and addressed the group. "Remember, the goal is to capture Morgan and his associates alive. We need their testimony to bring down the whole network. Use force only as necessary and watch each other's backs." Lucas nodded in agreement. "And keep in mind, there may be innocent people or hostages inside. Stay alert for any signs of civilians." The team took a collective breath, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. As the clock edged closer to midnight, Lucas checked his gear one last time. The weight of his weapon comfortable in his hands, the feel of his radio clipped securely to his vest, the reassuring presence of Rex's collar beneath his fingertips. Communication channels opened, voices low but clear over the radios. Teams in position came the steady reports. The countdown began. 5 minutes to breach. Lucas glanced at Sarah, who offered a brief nod. Their eyes met a silent exchange of trust and resolve. Minutes later, the team assembled in their designated spots, concealed in the shadows. The compound loomed large before them, an ominous fortress wrapped in darkness and guarded by the unseen eyes of security cameras. Suddenly, Rex's ears twitched sharply, his body tense. He sniffed the air and let out a soft, urgent bark, a signal that danger was imminent. Lucas's pulse quickened as he glanced at the dog, understanding the warning. With a crisp command, Captain Reynolds signaled the breach. The night exploded with action. Flashbangs detonated, sending bursts of light and sound into the air, disorienting those inside. SWAT operators moved swiftly through the main entrance, weapons drawn and voices steady. Lucas and Sarah led a team to the rear, cutting off escape routes and securing perimeter points. Rex darted ahead, nose to the ground, alert to every scent and sound. He was the eyes and ears in the shadows, detecting hidden threats before they could materialize. Gunfire echoed sharp and sudden as resistance erupted within the compound. Officers responded with disciplined precision, advancing methodically through corridors and warehouses. Lucas moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating with Sarah as they closed in on the central control room, the nerve center where Morgan and Hale directed their operations. Rex growled low, signaling the presence of armed men behind a reinforced door. With a swift kick, Lucas breached the door, weapon raised. The suspects were caught off guard, their plans shattered by the sudden onslaught. Morgan attempted to flee, but Rex intercepted him with lightning speed, teeth sinking into the man's arm, forcing him to the ground. Officers rushed in to secure the suspect's handcuffs, clicking shut, the chaos slowly giving way to order. Breathless but victorious, Lucas looked around at the faces of his team, exhaustion mingled with relief. The raid had been a success. Yet Lucas knew this was just the beginning. There were still questions to be answered, alliances to unravel, and a larger network to dismantle. But tonight, they had taken a crucial step. With Rex by his side and Sarah at his back, Lucas felt a fierce hope burning within him that justice was within reach, and the innocent might finally find peace. The sterile scent of the hospital corridors was a far cry from the acrid smoke and chaos of the raid that had unfolded just days before. Lucas Grant walked quietly through the gleaming halls, his footsteps muted on the polished floors. The weight of the past week's turmoil still clung to him. But here, amid the soft beeping of monitors and the hushed whispers of nurses, the battle had shifted from gunfire to healing. Emma and Mia lay side by side in a private room, bathed in gentle morning light streaming through wide windows. Their faces were pale but peaceful, the terror that had once gripped them slowly loosening its hold. Claire Brooks, their mother, was awake now, her strength returning bit by bit after the attack that had threatened to steal her life. Lucas entered with Rex, trailing closely behind the dog's presence, a source of comfort and calm for the girls. Emma's eyes brightened when she saw Rex, and she reached out with a tentative smile, running her fingers over his soft fur. Mia, still fragile but recovering, looked up and gave a shy wave. "How are my favorite girls today?" Lucas asked, softly pulling up a chair. Emma giggled quietly. "Rex is the best," she said. "He helped catch the bad man." Lucas smiled, nodding. "That's right. Rex is a hero just like you two." The room was a sanctuary of fragile hope. Nurses moved quietly, offering medicine and gentle reassurance. Carrie Novak, the social worker who had been their steady guide, sat nearby, speaking softly with Claire, who was surrounded by a small cluster of flowers and well wishes. Outside the hospital, the wheels of justice were turning rapidly. Vincent Hale and Jake Morgan had been arraigned, their faces grim and unyielding behind the steel bars of the courtroom. The evidence collected during the raid, countless weapons, falsified documents, and the damning forensic proof linking them to Claire's attack had dismantled the veneer of power they once wielded. Lucas had testified during the hearings detailing the operation, the raid, and the critical role Rex had played in apprehending Morgan. The courtroom was filled with tension as the gravity of the criminal enterprise was laid bare. Families who had suffered in silence now found their voices, and the scales of justice began to balance toward closure. Yet for Lucas, the true victory was in the quiet moments spent beside Emma and Mia. Moments filled with tentative smiles, whispered stories, and the slow but steady mending of broken spirits. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the city skyline, Lucas found himself watching the sisters play softly with a new set of stuffed animals brought by Carrie. Their laughter was still delicate, but it carried a strength that had been absent before. "You're getting stronger every day," Lucas said, his voice warm. Emma looked up, eyes bright. "We're going to be okay, right?" Lucas met her gaze with unwavering certainty. "Yes. You both are incredibly brave, and you have a whole team behind you." Rex rested his head on Emma's lap, content to be part of this healing circle. The bond between man, dog, and children had become unbreakable. But healing was not a simple or linear path. There were days when shadows returned, moments when fear flickered in their eyes, or nightmares broke their sleep. Carrie worked tirelessly, providing counseling and support, helping the girls reclaim their sense of safety and joy. Lucas remained a steadfast presence, balancing the demands of the ongoing investigation with his commitment to the family he had come to cherish. His relationship with Sarah Nolan deepened as well. Together they navigated the complex aftermath of the case, working to ensure that no loose ends remained. Vincent Hale faced life behind bars, his empire dismantled piece by piece. Morgan awaited sentencing, his future as bleak as the crimes he had committed. For Lucas, the case was a reminder of the fragile line between darkness and light, and the resilience of those who choose to fight for the good. As the days turned into weeks, the hospital became a place of transformation. Emma and Mia learned to laugh again, to play, to dream. Claire's recovery progressed steadily, her gratitude toward Lucas and Rex heartfelt and enduring. One evening, as Lucas stood by the window watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of amber, and Rose Rex sat faithfully at his side, the city's distant lights began to twinkle, promising a new beginning. Lucas knew that while the scars of the past might never fully fade, the future held hope, a future built on courage, compassion, and the unwavering bond of those who stood together in the face of darkness. The morning sun poured gently through the wide windows of a small, cozy home nestled on the edge of Benton County. Soft rays of light danced across the walls, warming the modest furnishings and filling the room with a sense of peace. It was a far cry from the cold sterility of the hospital rooms and the shadows of danger that had once loomed so large. Claire Brooks stood at the kitchen counter preparing a simple breakfast. Her movements were slow but steady, each task a small victory on her road to recovery. The pain that had once gripped her body and spirit still lingered, but it was no longer all-consuming. She glanced out the window toward the garden where Emma and Mia were already at play, their laughter ringing through the crisp air like a healing melody. Lucas Grant sat at the kitchen table sipping a cup of coffee, while Rex lay quietly at his feet, eyes half closed but ever watchful. The bond between them had deepened over the weeks. More than just a partnership between man and dog, it had become a foundation of strength and comfort for the entire family. Emma and Mia, still clutching their favorite toys, raced into the room, their faces flushed with excitement and joy. "Lucas, Rex, come see!" Emma called out, her eyes sparkling with delight. Lucas smiled warmly and set down his mug. "Lead the way, superstars," he said. Outside, the girls had constructed a small fort from blankets and cushions beneath the towering oak tree. Maddie Parker, the lively neighbor who had first brought cookies and laughter into their lives, was already there helping with the final touches. Together, they were a patchwork family woven from threads of courage, kindness, and resilience. As the morning unfolded, Claire joined them, her smile bright but tempered by the journey she had endured. "You girls have done an amazing job," she said softly, sitting on the grass beside them. The days had become a rhythm of healing medical appointments, balanced with moments of play and learning counseling sessions, interspersed with visits from friends and community helpers. Each step forward was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of connection. Lucas and Sarah Nolan continued their work both in the field and behind the scenes, ensuring that the threats posed by Vincent Hale's network were dismantled for good. Their commitment to justice was matched only by their dedication to the family who had become central to their lives. One afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Lucas sat with Claire on the porch. Rex lay curled at their feet, eyes half closed in contentment. Claire looked out over the quiet street and sighed deeply. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," she said. "There were times I didn't think we'd make it through." Lucas reached out, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "You're stronger than you realize. Emma and Mia have that strength because of you, and because of all of us standing with you." The future still held uncertainties, but together they were building something new, a life defined not by fear, but by hope. As twilight settled and stars began to twinkle overhead, the family sat together in the soft glow of the evening, a silent promise binding them. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them united with courage, love, and the unbreakable bond of those who choose to heal.